From news and views, issues and opportunities, we'll have in-depth conversations with decision makers to find out what they know and what they think. I'm Rico Hizon, inviting you to join the exchange because your business is our business.
Summer always comes with dwindling resources for a basic need, electricity. It highlights the lack of energy security in the country, resulting in higher power rates, outages, and remote areas that still lack power. With the onset of the dry season, authorities are advising consumers to conserve energy. And while ordinary Filipinos do their part to lessen demand, they're also looking beyond stopgap solutions from the country's leaders for a long-term adequate power supply. An oil crisis triggered by a raging war in Eastern Europe is taking renewable sources to center stage, raising the consciousness of nations to tap clean energy and push for its efficient use. The vision of energy security and a climate-ready Philippines in our C-Suite vision.
Customers of major power distributor Meralco will have to pay higher bills in March because of the higher electricity costs in the trading market. The impact of higher oil prices on power rates will be reflected in the coming months. Let's now have an exchange with Meralco's Joe Saldariaga. Joe, thank you so much for joining us on the program. For the benefit of our viewers, can you briefly explain how higher fuel prices impact the increase in power rates?
Hi, Rico. Thanks for having me. It's my pleasure. Well, as you know, fuel costs form part of the generation charge, which is the single largest component of the power bill. So it is basically paid by Meralco to suppliers like those that operate the power plants. In our March rate adjustment, however, we have not yet seen the impact of rising fuel prices on the generation costs. However, we expect that this would affect the cost of power. Meralco purchases from the plants that utilize natural gas from Malampaya. So that's around 37% of our supply. Malampaya, although domestically produced, is priced in US dollars and benchmarked on international crude oil prices, which, as we have seen, have risen quite significantly in the past few months.
Ayan, nakikita rin natin, no, yung foreign exchange, no? Yung Philippine peso is depreciating, bumabagsak against the US dollar. At nakikita rin natin, no, Joe, no, according to data, the Philippines is one of the country's most expensive power rates in Southeast Asia. Bakit pa ganun?
Well, kasi tayo, Rico, we actually reflect the true cost of electricity, unlike in other countries where power is subsidized. Dito sa atin, kung ano yung actual na presyo ng kuryente, yun yung nire-reflect natin. No? So our rates adjust on a monthly basis, and these are based on kung ano yung actual billings na natatanggap o nare-receive natin from our suppliers. Yung generation and transmission charges basically are pass-through costs, largely impact what customer pay because they account for around 70% of the monthly power bill. So right now, it is quite early to say the definite movements on rates for next month or for May. So we have to wait for those factors. But as mentioned, medyo siguro kailangan tingnan na natin at paghandaan yung rate adjustment na pataas, no? Lalo sa May, given the repricing of the Malampaya gas.
Pero ang ating mga manonood dito sa exchange, Joe, at least want to get an estimate para hindi ba ready sila sa kanilang mga budget for the months of April and May kung gaano kataas ang magiging presyo ng elektrisidad.
Well, how I wish, Rico, I had a crystal ball, but it's very difficult to say what the actual impact or the actual rates will be, no? Kasi we need to really wait for the actual billings. But aside from rates, Rico, we also have to consider consumption. Consumption increases during summer by around 10 to 40%, depending on the usage. So this is basically driven by the shift in ambient temperatures impact to the appliances performance, no? As well as additional time these are used. Kasi syempre, pag mas mainit ang panahon, yung ating mga kababayan, yung mga customers ng Meralco, actually hindi lang Meralco but nationwide, no?
Oo.
Maging sa ibang distribution utilities and electric cooperatives. Kung dati you were using air conditioning units for 6 hours, I think during the summer that is probably going to double at least.
That's right.
Or add additional
So
hours.
Joe, yan ang susunod na tanong ko, no? What are the top energy consuming appliances? Of course, meron diyang air condition, may electric fan, may mga computer. Ano ba yung mga appliances that usually eat up a lot of energy?
Well, that's a very nice question, Rico. Top in mind is air condition. Regardless of season or temperature, it's considered as the most energy-consuming activity of any consumer. A big part of the household or business consumption is attributed to the use of aircon. It's probably going to hit 50 to 70% of your total consumption. Likewise, we have to bear in mind that appliances that functions as cooling or heating agents, I mentioned a while back, the air conditioning units, refrigerators, heaters, just to name a few, they consume more electricity in order to, fulfill what they were tasked
Correct.
to do, which is either heat or make it colder. So hence, it is really important to make sure that these appliances are, one, always in tip-top condition, two, clean and to make them work optimally and efficiently. I experienced this personally, Rico. There was a period in time when, because of just so much things to do, I was not able to, regularly clean my aircon unit, and it really hit my electric bill. So that's one tip I'd like to give consumers. Siguraduhin ho ninyo, malinis po yung aircon nyo. So well-maintained.
So isang tip yan, no? What are the other tips that you can also share with our kababayans on how to conserve energy, Joe?
Well, ito, kung kunyari, you're shopping for a new aircon, if you have the budget, consider using inverter technology. Inverter units usually, Rico, they're more efficient than conventional units, no? Kasi meron kang optimal control over the motor's operation. You can save as much as 64% based on our Power Lab in energy costs when using inverters for the same or even better level of comfort. Ngayon, isa pa, get the right AC or aircon size for your room so you don't waste energy. Yung mga binibila naman natin ng appliance stores are very helpful. Yung mga staff doon, no? For example, getting 1 horsepower for a 24 square meter room might cost you an additional cost of 900, a little bit over 900 a month. So for a quick guide to help you check if you're using the right size, our customers can visit our Meralco website. For example, kung ang kwarto mo ay 18 to 22 square meters, yan, pwede 1 horsepower. Kung ang kwarto mo 23 to 27 square meters, 1.5 horsepower. And more or less, you should get the right size for your room.
All right, very useful energy conservation tips. Maraming salamat for this Power Rates Exchange. Meralco's Joe Saldariaga. And after 11 consecutive weeks of fuel price hikes, motorists are getting some relief from a hefty price cut. Pump prices went down by 5 to 11 pesos per liter, the first reduction this year. But fuel products remain above 60 pesos per liter. Customers are seeing the impact of more expensive fuel on food. Vegetable prices have gone up, and an agricultural group warns rice may cost more because of rising production expenses. And now here's a rundown of this week's top business stories. Finance officials are studying how to carry out President Duterte's proposal to raise the monthly subsidy for poor families to 500 pesos from 200 pesos. Mr. Duterte says the current amount is not enough, a sentiment shared by a number of lawmakers. The Finance Department says IT BPO companies that continue with the work-from-home setup must give up tax incentives. And the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas keeps interest rates unchanged at 2% to support economic recovery amid the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. And straight ahead on The Exchange, where your business is our business. A proposed law opening some sectors to full foreign ownership has been signed by the president. And how can the country move towards clean and cheaper sources of energy? The Institute for Climate and Sustainable Cities shares their insights right here on CNN Philippines. News you can trust. Glad you're staying with us right here on The Exchange, where your business is our business. I'm Rico Hizon. Restrictions on foreigners to fully own certain businesses will soon be removed after President Duterte signed the law amending the 85-year-old Public Service Act. Business groups welcome the measure allowing full foreign ownership of telcos, airlines, and railways. It is expected to boost economic growth through investments and job generation. While lawmakers express support, they're calling for safeguards to national security. But a party list representative says this will lead to more expensive services. A climate and energy policy group is telling the government to increase support for renewable energy to reduce our dependence on coal. But why is the country lagging behind the global push for renewables, and what is its impact on the ordinary Filipino? Let's now have an exchange with Institute for Climate and Sustainable Cities, Alberto de Lusong. Sir, thank you so much for joining us. In the report, your group said that the country may experience longer and frequent power outages this season. Now that there's a fuel crisis, should we expect a worse situation?
Well, I think that we reported the need for the public to get involved, no? Help conserve energy, be more mindful of their consumption. So I think that because of that, we've seen positive responses from the public sector. Comelec, for example, has shown that they're prepared for that scenario. And also the public, we're hearing, are taking steps. They're certainly more aware. So we hope that all of this contributes to a more positive scenario for us.
Of course, renewable energy has been a discussion on the table, and we are seeing some investments taking place in the private sector. But of course, the oil crisis has, opened it even more widely, the discussion on clean energy. Why is it important to shift, and why should this matter to ordinary Filipinos like you and me?
Yes, let me talk about two important factors. One, price. If we have energy based on what is present in the country, then we're not subject to all of these price fluctuations that we are seeing today. And in fact, we're seeing probably the highest prices of coal ever. If we relied more on renewable energy and less on coal, by the way, our consumption of coal is about 54% of all electricity produced, then we will not be subject to all of these fluctuations. Also, we will have a more secure source of energy. Remember, just a few months ago, we had a scare in that Indonesian coal export ban because they wanted to reserve the coal for their own use. So I think that security of supply, less prone to international price movement, would certainly benefit the consumer.
A huge dependence there, no, Mr. De Lusong, on fossil fuels. So why is the country lagging behind the transition to clean energy? Is it all about investments, the higher cost of setting up these renewable energy systems?
I'd like to go back. I've been in the energy sector for, let's see, about 4 decades now, Rico. And I was there when our problem was oil. I was a new employee of the Ministry of Energy then. And I saw the response that the government did. We developed our own fossil fuel resources. That's why we have Malampaya now. But we also developed our own renewable energy resources, primarily hydro and geothermal. Those resources continue to exist. So we've had that program, and that program made us self-sufficient up to 50%, as I recall. Now, what happened? We had this focus on what I call a base load-centric planning paradigm. And what has that resulted? This dependence on a lot of these baseload power plants that, if you look at our archipelagic nature, is not really compatible with our geography. We have a few small plants. If they fail, prices spike. We have experience of blackouts. What we need is a more distributed, more diverse power configuration and a power supply that is what I call more flexible. Those that can adjust to the ups and downs of our typical consumption.
So what kind of renewable energy must really be implemented and addressed due to our archipelagic formation?
Well, for example, we all know that solar is a good option for us. It's available everywhere in the country. And there are many developers. So first, solar. It just so happens that it is also the least cost power option for us. In other words, nothing is cheaper than solar. It has its characteristics. You can't have it at night, for example. But that's why you have a grid where they mix all of these different sources to come up with what we call a least cost mix. So solar is there. I've already said hydro and geothermal, but we have a lot of wind resources here in the Philippines, both onshore, and more recently we've found that we probably have one of the largest potentials for offshore wind in the country. So a lot of these renewable energy potentials and a lot of interest in developing them from both local and international investors.
So what should be the priority of the next administration in terms of promoting renewable energy?
I think that the next administration should look at a new planning paradigm, focusing on a program that is less dependent on baseload power plants, moving towards what we call an energy transition towards renewables, and having a more diverse and flexible power configuration. Now, I'm happy to note that this is precisely the direction that the DOE has started to do. And we hope that as it continues to do so, it engages with groups like ours and private sector also. Because private sector in the Philippines, according to our laws, are the ones that are tasked to build the power plants. DOE does the plan, but it's the private sector that takes up the challenge of building the power plants. They have to be involved.
Thank you so much for this Clean Energy Exchange Institute for Climate and Sustainable Cities, Alberto Dalusong. And still ahead on the exchange, where your business is our business, what are the pros and cons of shifting to solar energy? Filipinos German solar managing partner Joe Stauder joins us next. And commuters will soon be able to take the MRT 3 free of charge. Keep it right here on CNN Philippines. News you can trust. Welcome back right here on The Exchange, where your business is our business. I'm Rico Hizon. In a tropical country, it makes sense to harness a resource as abundant as solar energy. We'll look at the potential and limitations in making the renewable energy shift in this exchange with Filipinos German solar managing partner Joe Stauder. Joe, thank you so much for joining us. You're also called Solar Joe. What are the opportunities in managing a solar power business here in the country?
Thank you for having me, Rico. The opportunities are vast. First, because of the environment we are living in, we have 12 hours of steady sunlight, means there is free energy everywhere. And then second, because of the circumstances, because we have one of the highest electricity rates in Asia, which are also the fastest increasing in price. So it makes massively sense to invest in an asset where you can produce your own clean and free energy right where you live or where you work if you have a business. And yeah, that also creates a huge market demand. So the opportunities are extremely vast and big in the Philippines.
All right, let's break down, the cost of solar energy in the country. For households, Joe, what are the monetary savings if our kababayans will shift to solar power?
Yeah, so it always depends on how a building consumes electricity. There is no standard pricing or standard savings. Of course, the more solar panels you add, the more you can save. But to give you a ballpark figure, if a household wants to save around 5,000 pesos a month, it is always easy if you want to calculate how much it is. If you multiply the savings you want to achieve per year for 5,000 savings per month, that would be 55 or 60,000 a year times 4 to 5. So you have to be ready to invest something around 250 to 300,000 pesos for that solar system. That sounds a lot. It is an investment, but there are very flexible financing options. For example, zero interest financing over 12, 24 a month to lower the cost burdens, and then you can enjoy the savings without a huge capital exposure at the beginning.
250,000 initial investment. So how many solar panels does this include?
Depends on the capacity of the solar panels. There are a lot of different solar panels in the market, but usually between 8 and let's say 12 solar panels.
So the return on an investment, if it's a 5,000 pesos savings per month, could take about 2 years, Joe.
It would take around 5 years.
5 years?
4 to 5 years. Yeah, that's why when you calculate the yearly savings you want to achieve times 5, that's how long it takes until you have the initial investment out.
Are you seeing a significant progress in the country shift and in household shift to renewable energy through the years that you've been here?
Yes, we started 11 years ago, and there is a huge change. A lot of people understood that solar is reliable. A lot of people are aware of the technology, and especially in the past 3 to 4 years, also during the pandemic, because a lot of people had to stay at home and had to use more aircon, for example, also for homeschooling, the demand increased by, I would even say 50%, 60%. With massive growth rates, which is really nice to see, and that's also very important for the Philippines to spread the technology that can help to lower down the electricity costs, and also to produce more clean energy to avoid climate change effects that we are massively affected by as an island that we are in the end.
We heard Mr. Dalusong earlier in a previous interview, and he said that, of course, we have our hydro and geothermal plants, but of course, the more cost-effective ones at the moment are the likes of solar power and wind energy. How can we harness this even more in the Philippines?
I think it's all about education. That's a big headline. Education, I would say, in 3 levels. First, you have to educate still the end consumers about how reliable the technology is, how effective the technology is. On the second level, you have to educate the decision makers like architects, construction companies to spread that technology or integrate it in the building designs from the beginning, like it is shown in many countries around the world. So it becomes a standard. And third, we also have to educate more the installers, the actual installers, because sadly we see a lot of let's say inexperienced installers with let's say using lower quality materials, what can in the end lead to solar systems that are not really well working, and that is bad for the industry. So education is really key, and that will automatically spread the technology, because it is so logic to go solar in the Philippines and to produce the electricity right where you live.
Of course, the initial barrier there, right, is the outlay of 250,000. But of course, households and businesses also have to consider that it will be savings for them within 4 to 5 years. You have to look at it in the medium to long term rather than the near term cost of investing in these solar panels.
Yes, that is correct. It's an investment good, and you have warranties of up to 25 years. So the security is there for you that you will eventually save. If you see it as an investment good, it gives you a very nice return on every peso that you invest in a solar system, which is around 20% per year. That's a really good investment if you, for example, compare it to an investment in the stock market. You have to first find a stock that gives you 20% return, fully automatic, by harvesting the sun. Something what we have naturally without any headache.
So what is your outlook for the solar power business in 2022, Joe?
In 2022, I see still a massive demand and still a massive growth of around 20 to 50%.
Thank you so much for this renewable energy exchange. Philergy German Solar Managing Partner, Joe Stauder. And before we go, here's some good news for commuters. Beginning Monday, March 28th, the public can take the MRT3 free of charge as part of temporary relief measures amid higher fuel prices. And this will run until April the 30th. This is indeed good news for our commuters. And this is The Exchange. We make sense of the facts and the figures and the ups and downs of the business cycle because your business is our business. I'm Rico Hizon. Thanks for watching CNN Philippines. News you can trust.